Hi everyone, this week I'm going to give you an update on my little container garden. You can see here, even in this small space, there's so much you can grow and enjoy. It's midsummer. Let me show you what's doing well in these containers at this time of year. And I'll share lots of gardening tips along the way. I've got a bunch of herbs like sage, mint, lemon thyme, basil, and rosemary, which was a recent purchase. I almost forgot to show you this. It's the lemongrass. I don't know how I missed it because it's pretty massive. It's grown quite a lot since I showed you last. Growing herbs at home can really save you money, especially if you use them quite a lot in cooking. I purchased the sage a few months back for a few dollars. It has grown quite a bit since then, and I was drawn to its lovely variegated leaf. And I have to say, like, if I was to purchase some sprigs of sage in the supermarket, they cost around $3 to $4. But here, having my own supply, I can just pinch off the tops and off I go. And the great thing about doing this is that it encourages more shoots and it creates a more bushier plant. Same goes for basil and mint. A lot of them do that. So the more you harvest from them, the bushier and bigger the plants seem to get. We used to have some really large rosemary bushes in our garden, but unfortunately they had to be removed because we were putting on an extension to our house. When I saw this one in the garden centre, I just decided to buy it. You know, I got a bit of money for Christmas, and what do I do with that? Of course, I'll buy some plants. So I thought a rosemary plant would be a good investment, and I wouldn't mind having one growing in a container close to the kitchen. While this plant is quite small, as I mentioned a moment ago, rosemary plants can get huge, so I will need to do maintenance on this to keep it well pruned to a manageable size for this pot. This whole container garden is in a full sun position, so it gets more than 6 hours of sunlight a day, which is something that rosemary loves. And as well as that, rosemary loves well drained soil, so it's ideal to grow in a container too. Something I didn't realise when I first started gardening was that some plants are annuals and they only prefer to grow at certain times of year. So you have the sun-loving, heat-loving plants, and then you have the winter cool crop plants. Now, when it comes to herbs, there are some herbs that only prefer to grow in the heat of summer. Like, for example, down here, basil. Basil would definitely not survive the winters here in this part of New South Wales, especially when the temperatures drop and the frost hits. So it really is a herb that for me can only really be enjoyed here in the warmer months. It smells so good. This is sweet basil, one of the more common basils to grow, but in the past I've grown a few different types like Thai basil, a perennial one as well. Lots of options out there, but this one is a good staple and very common for people to grow here in this part of New South Wales. Here's a few quick fire herb growing tips that many of you already know, so I won't go into too much detail. But for example, when it comes to mint, always best to grow this in containers because it's very invasive and it can travel underground and take over your garden, so in a pot is great. Once you get a thyme plant established, it's very easy to propagate. All you do is you go down to the base and pull off one of the stems, which usually contains a root. Like here you can see with this one, there's roots starting to form down there at the base. If I was to snap that off, give it a trim, like the top section, the green growth, pop it into a pot, keep it well moist, and this will take off, and then I'll have a fresh basil plant. With lemongrass, be very careful when you're harvesting it because it can give you the equivalent of a paper cut, which has happened to me many times before, but I will show you how to harvest some of this now. This plant is still quite small, but I'll show you as an example. You just grab one of the shoots, and I tend to just like pull it down like this. Sorry, I had to put the camera down. I couldn't do it with one hand. So pretty much you just pull it down and it snaps off one of the shoots. And there you go. There's a bit of lemongrass that you can use in your cooking for stir fries or curries, or even just making a simple lemongrass tea. And when it comes to propagating lemongrass, it's very easy to do. You just leave this in water, change the water over every few days, and within no time you will see some fresh shoots popping out from here, and you've got a whole new, brand new plant. Right, I don't think I'll be harvesting much more off this for the moment. I'll wait until it gets a little bit bigger. So let's move on to some of the flowers that we have growing in here, and then after that we'll talk about the fruit and veg that I have in these pots too. I bought this plant today when I was dropping my flowers off at Tarmore Garden Centre. I love growing this Australian native, usually in the ground, not normally in containers, but I'm going to give it a shot here in this area. Not quite sure where to put it because everything's looking pretty full at the moment, but you know us gardeners, we always tend to be able to make a bit of space. I call it a fan flower for obvious reasons. It's the more common name, but the proper name for this plant is called Scaviola. If you want to grow Australian native plants in containers, it's recommended that you use an Australian native potting mix which is low in potassium, because these Australian native plants don't like too much potassium. So I might have to grab myself a bag of that the next time I'm at the garden centre. Another purple flowering plant I have growing in here is this salvia. I can't quite remember the variety name, but salvias in general do really well here in this climate because they are so drought tolerant, and even when they look like they're on the brink of dying, like this one was a couple of times from neglect, they always seem to bounce back. There's also this one, Salvia White Flame, and Salvia Mystic Spars. This afternoon there was a blue banded bee at this one, but I wasn't quick enough to catch it, unfortunately. I've got sunflowers. These are a dwarf variety. They're not going to last much longer, but I will be able to leave them in here and let this all dry out and harvest some seeds, and possibly, well, I've got enough time now to pop more seeds in the ground and get some more flowers before the frost hits, which is ages away. Here's another plant that I had in the garden since last year. Oh, I can't remember the name. Let me see if I can find the label. I've just done an image search on Google and I'm almost certain that this is called Euphoria Diamond Frost, which is a beautiful perennial. I purchased the plant maybe a year or so ago and it's really starting to take over this container. I did back in, when was it, in winter time, have some pansies, no, violas violas in here, and they have managed to survive some of the hot days. I think it's because they're shaded out by this plant. I've got one there, and I believe, yeah, there's some more down underneath in here too. Here's a tip if you're trying to find out the ID of a plant. Take a photo of it and search on Google Images, and that will give you the suggestion of what they think it is. Now, if you're still not 100% positive that the ID is correct, you can always bring in a photo of that plant, the foliage, or even the plant itself. If it's, you know, you could take a branch off if you like, or a stem, and bring it into your local garden centre. I've done that before and they've always been very helpful, and you know, you've got your horticultural expert there that will be able to tell you what the plant is. Back to the flowers, so I've got some of these which are beautiful zinnias, some purple ones and pink too. It's a little bit hard to tell the difference between both of them unless you see them side by side. Very slight, because this one is such a vibrant hot pink, but you can slightly tell that this is purple. And then down here we have marigolds growing beside the tomato plant. Great companion plants, which I've mentioned before. They work well together and I do love growing these. Just to quickly mention, for any new gardeners, the sunflowers, the marigolds and the zinnias, these are all annual plants. They're all very easy to collect seeds from once the plants die back. This is something I'll show you how to do later on in the season. I've also got this annual, which is a trailing petunia. I'm not sure the exact name. I actually did purchase this. It does well in hanging baskets, or as you can see here, if you're trying to create more of a trailing effect to cover the base of the pots, this will eventually hang over, covering this entire area. Now, since we've covered all the flowers and the herbs, I'm going to go on to the food, and we'll start off with something that is trailing, which is down here. Look at these little strawberries. They're far from perfect looking. They certainly wouldn't pass any supermarket purchasing test. I don't think you'd find these on the shelves there, but they taste delicious. I've got a few strawberry plants dotted around the place. There's a couple here, and I can't remember where else they are. I'm sure they'll pop up soon. I also have a cool climate crop that's still going for some reason. It's this, the rainbow chard. I just think it looks so pretty in here. Still really teeny tiny, but I just love that colour, and I think it really helps draw out the colour of the purple zinnias and these beautiful petunias too. Very, very nice. So I won't necessarily be eating lots of this because the plant's pretty puny, but I'm going to leave it in there because I think it looks great. Here we've got some capsicums or chilies. I'm not quite sure what they are. Actually, I think these are jalapenos. Yeah, they have the jalapeno shape to them. Nah, I'm wrong. This one's the jalapeno plant. This is a black jalapeno, and the one over there must be a capsicum. And then we've also got this, which is the celery. It really hasn't grown much, but I'm just gonna leave it there. It's grand, looks nice, and we'll see how it goes. What else do I have in here? Oh, I have more of the spring onions, which I haven't harvested a whole heap of them. Let's pull one out now and take a look at it. Oh, they've really stuck in there. Can I get it out? Yes. Give it a shake. There we go. Oh, there's two of them stuck together. Look at that. Beautiful. This is a recent purchase. It's an eggplant. Now, I do have 4 other eggplants growing in the raised beds. Actually, I might quickly go over and show you them because there's quite a lot to harvest. Maybe next week we'll take a look at the raised bed area and do a garden harvest too. But these are called Slim Jim. Plant's still quite a bit off producing anything, but it's looking pretty healthy. And then down here I have these tomato plants, which are growing with the marigolds that I showed you a few minutes ago. Something that's really important to remember when you are growing food or flowers or whatever in containers is that the potting mix usually only has enough fertilizer to keep the plants going for a few months. In general, I would say the potting mixes that I purchase, it's usually about 3 months. So after that period, you really need to get some more fertilizer into the soil if you want your plants and your crops to continue producing. You can do this by adding fish emulsion. You can add some compost if you like, well rotted down. You can also put in manures. If you want, you can use a liquid fertilizing solution too, and you can use if you have a worm farm, you can use the castings from them also. Here's where I have those other 4 eggplants which I mentioned earlier, and there is just heaps on them. 4 different varieties to tie them all up because they're just all over the place. But these ones are the fairy tale eggplants. Super cute, lots to pick from in here. These are the white eggplants, and I believe this one is the Bonica eggplant, a little bit slower to produce. There's not really much going on there at the moment, but next Friday or next week we'll have lots and lots to pick from. I'm back over at the container garden. This one just fell off the plant, so I brought it over here with me, and I'm thinking, how fun is it growing your own food? I mean, you'd never be able to buy something like this at the major 2 supermarkets, maybe in a fruit and veg shop, but not in the big 2. Well, that's it for this week, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful 7 days ahead and a happy gardening.